Hi, welcome to another edition of the Trustcast Show, and really happy to have Cheri Alvarez with us, um, the CEO of Compeer Buffalo and Compeer International. Welcome, Cheri.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, Cheri Alvarez runs an organization built on a radical idea that the most powerful treatment for mental illness might just be friendship. And as CEO of Compeer Buffalo and Compeer International, she oversees programs in 40 communities across 4 countries and is now helping lead a global coalition working with the World Health Organization to tackle what the U.S. Surgeon General called an epidemic, loneliness. So, Cheri, Compeer's entire model is built on the idea that a single friend can change someone's mental health. When did you first see that happening in front of you?
Well, I was introduced to Compeer, when I worked for other nonprofits in the Buffalo area. And for 10 years, I was actually working in foster care and adoption. And while working with that population, I had referred a lot of our clients to Compeer and became familiar with what they do, what we do, and the impact that can have on youth experiencing situations in foster care, being separated from their biological families and experiencing their own mental health challenges. So I would say my first introduction was really seeing that from the outside perspective of clients and receiving the service from Compeer.
So walk me through how do you end up with someone like you'd mentioned foster care. Is it generally these teens or are they preteens or where are these people as far as their age group, most of the people that you serve?
We actually serve all ages. We start at the age of 6 and we go up into older adults. And any client can be referred to us from a mental health professional. So when a client is receiving mental health treatment, counseling, their counselor refers them to us when they see that they're at a point in their journey where friendship would complement the counseling service that they're receiving. So they're receiving their clinical support from other agencies or other clinicians. Then those clinicians refer them to Compeer for friendship. And so we complement that clinical work that the counselor is doing. And at that point in their journey, they're, looking to get reconnected with their community, to talk with someone about their experience, what they're going through, to feel less isolated and less lonely, and maybe even practice some of the goals that they have in counseling.
So let's say I'll just take on the lower end. So you have a child, 6, 7, 8 years old. I'll just group those kids all together. How would this work for them? So you have a counselor and they decide, how does functionally, how does this work? And if a kid goes to it and they say, well, here's your friend, it doesn't exactly work like that. So I want to understand how it works. And it seems like a tremendous idea. I want to get to the nuts and bolts of it.
Sure. So we receive a referral from a counseling agency and we review that referral of that young person in this situation. And we make sure they're a good fit for our program. And if they are, we then are looking at our volunteers. And assuming they're being referred for that one-to-one friendship, we look at our volunteers and we match based on compatibility. So based on the interest of that youth, let's just say in this situation, we have a 7-year-old who's interested in playing basketball. And we have a volunteer who has an interest in playing basketball. That common factor right there is what we might match them on. In addition to location or other preferences or interests that both parties have identified. So it's not on first come, first served basis. It's really on compatibility. We want both the volunteer and the client to be successful in their friendship. So we talk with the volunteer. Any volunteer that goes through our program, we are really introducing them to 3 different clients. The clients don't know that. So behind the scenes, we're talking to the volunteer to say, we have 3 different clients that we think are a good match for you. We let them review the demographics or interest of that client. That volunteer selects the one they think would best align with their interest. And then we reach out to the client to say, we have a volunteer who's interested in being matched with you for friendship. Here's a little bit about their story and who they are. If both parties agree, we then set up a time to meet with them. So a Compeer team member will meet with the volunteer and the client together for the first introduction. I will tell you my favorite experience was when we had a youth who was interested in dinosaurs, and we had a volunteer who was interested in dinosaurs. So we worked with our local science museum, and we had their first introductory meeting at the science museum. The youth knew more about dinosaurs than the volunteer did. And so he actually gave him the tour of the museum, introducing him to all different types of dinosaurs. And it was really unique to see them come together. And when you see that basic common interest, link them, the conversation and relationship just flows from there. So in that situation, they then went on to schedule their next time together without Compeer. So we'll do the first one, we'll be the connector, we'll bring them together. Then we ask them to schedule their next date where they're getting together. Of course, if it's a youth, we're coordinating with a parent or guardian. And then it's out, they're out in the community. They're out doing whatever is an interest to both of them. They don't have to work through our office. It's supposed to be more natural. So at first it may be awkward, of course. And we do offer activities in the community that they can come to, and they don't have to think about coordinating their own experience or their own journey. It's up to them, however they choose to do that. So sometimes they'll go out into the community, maybe go to a park or go to a baseball game, another activity, or they'll just sit and talk somewhere. It really depends on what they both want to do. And we encourage the volunteer to have that conversation with the client and build that relationship over time to see how they want to spend their time. On average, they're spending about 4 hours a month just connecting. Sometimes that's in person, sometimes that's texting and phone calls. Again, it's whatever works for that match and what they choose to do and how they choose to spend their time together.
So the volunteers, are they adult volunteers, or are they junior volunteers, or
All of
generally?
our clients are 18 and over. We do a thorough background check, reference check, interview, training. We ensure safety along the way, both for the client and the volunteer. So, they're people from the community who, for the most part, they hear about us through word of mouth. So another volunteer had a positive experience. They tell their story to a coworker or to a neighbor or someone at church. And then someone else comes forward and says, hey, I heard about their experience. I think I'm ready to be a volunteer. Then we go through that process. We do a background check. We do a sex offender registry. We do a local police clearance check. And we walk them through that whole experience with us, eventually leading to a training and then through the process of being matched. And it's amazing to witness people from all walks of life come forward to say, I'm ready to offer friendship to someone who's ready to receive that. And on the flip side, it's amazing to see our clients come forward and raise their hand and say, I'm looking for friendship. I'm looking for someone to share my experience with, or I'm looking for someone to accept me or to listen or just see me as who I am. That's pretty brave of our clients to come forward and ask for that support.
Is there a median age range that most of the clients are, or does it really vary all over?
It varies, and I think it varies by location. So some of our locations might only serve adults, some might only serve youth, depending on their community or how they got started as a program. In our Buffalo, New York location, we serve all ages. And at one point, like our youth clients, we had a lot of youth clients. And then sometimes, a year goes by and we might have more adult clients. I think it really depends on the individuals who are referring their clients to us, who's hearing more about us and is aware of our service to refer them. So if we go and present at a mental health agency and say, here's a service that we offer, and they're serving adults, we might get a heavy increase of adult clients being referred to us. But yeah, it varies throughout the year. And I would say when volunteers come on, sometimes they start off being more interested in being a support for youth. And I think that's just an assumption of, well, I want to be a mentor for youth. That kind of goes hand in hand. But then they learn about the loneliness associated with our adults and older adults, especially our older adults. Our older adults are often individuals who family members have passed on, their spouse, their friends. They truly are isolated and don't have that social network that they know they need to live longer, to be healthy, to be satisfied in life. So I think when you tell some of the stories of our older adults, it really draws in volunteers to become a friend with an older adult.
So this could be somebody who's in their 60s, 70s, or 80s that is otherwise just kind of on their own. So would this also be somebody who would maybe even be in a nursing home?
Absolutely. Right? They can be living anywhere, independently or through the support of others. Some may live with family. I think sometimes we hear individuals say, "Well, if they're living with their family, they're not lonely. Like they don't need our support." And I was like, "Well, they do. They need different support, and maybe they feel like a burden on their family because they constantly need something from their family that's surrounding them. So this offers a different level of support." And just doing different experiences with a volunteer than they might do with their own family.
So you stepped in as interim CEO during what sounds like kind of a turbulent time, and then got the permanent role. What was that transition?
Wow. I felt fortunate. It's an honor to work at Compeer. It's a privilege. And I was excited to continue the work with our team that we had already been working on already. Um, Knowing who our team was, knowing our clients, knowing our stakeholders, everyone that supports us. I was excited to get started, but also recognized I needed to pause and just kind of get a lay of the land from a different lens through a different perspective. And before just hitting the ground running. So there's a lot of conversations, a lot of listening, a lot of learning, and still am. It's been several years and I'm still who can I talk to? Who can I learn from? What perspective did they have? What experience did they have? I love running into volunteers who were with us 10, 20 years ago. And they're not a volunteer anymore, but they learn about how our organization has grown or how it may look different than their experience. So I think it started off as learning and listening, and it continues as learning and listening.
So Compeer as an organization, tell me about where you guys are all located. So you're in charge of the Buffalo and Compeer International. So you're pretty much the leader for the entire organization, but then you're also responsible for that local area. Is that correct?
It's correct. It's a little complicated, but you've got it down. So Buffalo, New York serves as the headquarters for international, but also supports the local community in Buffalo, New York. So we're serving clients directly, and then we support the 40 locations. So Compeer was founded in Rochester, New York, over 50 years ago by our founder, Bernice Skirble. She goes by Bunny. And she had her own personal experience with a really tragic car accident and found herself in the hospital with a very long road to recovery physically. And during that experience, she realized the power of friendship and how that got her through such a difficult part of her life when she had two young children. She could see other people in the hospital not having the support that she had, who were no visitors, no one really caring for them. And she
Mm-hmm.
saw how that differed for her. And so when she left that experience from the hospital, she was determined to do something about it. And Compeer was formed from there. The headquarters merged with Buffalo about 15 years ago. So that's how that kind of moved from the Rochester area to the Buffalo area. And so now my responsibility is supporting what we're doing in Buffalo and all the people that we serve and all of our stakeholders, and then supporting our team that focuses on our international side. So we're in Canada, Australia, England, and then the US, several states throughout the US. We have about 18 locations in New York State alone, which is our largest area, is the New York State. And we're mostly mid to East Coast for
Where do you
locations.
guys? So I want to find out more about uh, it just in general, but I want to know where do you get your funding from? Because it seems like a great idea, a great organization. The concept is really powerful, but this is the kind of thing that it's hard to get the money to operate something like that. Is that accurate? Where do you get funding to operate something which is kind of a noble undertaking? And people would say a bunch of do-gooders, and thank God for that. But it's also just getting together the funding is I imagine challenging. Is that accurate?
That is accurate. We do not charge a fee for our services, so they're all free to our clients. So it's very important that we are securing the funding to continue the service and to continue for it to grow. For a lot of our locations, the funding is coming from local foundations. We also have county funding, state funding, federal funding. A lot of our locations will do fundraising events. In Buffalo, we do an annual golf tournament, which is very successful for our location. And then individual donors, meeting with people to talk about, here's an opportunity that you can support. This is what it looks like when you fund Compeer. So it's all levels of philanthropy, between individuals to foundations to state and federal dollars. We're always seeking opportunities for grants that align with the work that we're doing so that we can continue doing what we do, but also do more and do something different that still aligns with our purpose.
So the Surgeon General said loneliness is as deadly as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Did that report change anything for your work, or did it just confirm what you kind of already?
It confirmed what we already knew, but it also showed us that it's starting to get the attention that it needs. And I think a lot of that came out during COVID. I think during COVID, people who never really understood that impact of loneliness or isolation started to feel it themselves. Whether they were working remotely and no longer interacting with their coworkers, you don't realize what that does for you until you no longer have it. And so being home, being isolated, not being able to leave your home, I think people started to really paying attention to the impact loneliness had on them as a person. And not that it just happens to everybody else and not ourselves. People felt that or saw it in their loved ones. And I think the attention that it's starting to get is very necessary. Whether you're someone who's been working your whole life and you go to retire, that is a shift in your life. That your identity was work. Your friends may have been work. And then all of a sudden you're not getting up every day to go and see your friends at work or your colleagues or having those conversations. It can significantly impact your life. And you have to really be intentional about how you're going to make those connections going forward. So you still have them in some way or another. But not everyone thinks about that until it happens, until you feel it. But you can really prevent it by being intentional about building those connections. So I think it validated what we already knew, and it helped us to tell our story more and say, we've been doing this for over 50 years. We know the importance of it. Let's keep talking about it, because the more we're talking about it, the more people are going to feel less like it's only them who feels that way, but it's actually more common.
So 1 in 5 adolescents report being lonely. Are you seeing that in your youth programs? What does loneliness look like for a 12-year-old?
Well, of course, I'm going to talk about social media and phones, because I think that's playing a big role for the youth across the world. We're seeing youth who don't always know how to connect.
So is there a positive and a negative aspect to social media?
I do, in my opinion, yes. I think the negative part is you can withdraw from in-person social interaction because you're face down, you're in your phone, and that's who you're interacting with. And that's where your comfort is. The positive is you're accepted with whomever you're connected with on your phone. You're finding the groups of people that you identify with, that accept you as you are, even though your only interaction is through your phone or whatever system you're using. So there are pros and cons. It has to be used wisely, and it has to be used in a safe way, and not spending too much time on it. So a balance of both. I think we see a lot of youth who experienced middle school and high school during COVID lost that life skill of knowing how to interact face to face with people, have conversation, even start a conversation. So we want that to continue. We want them to be interacting in person. And we see a lot of kids who struggle with even coming to our office to have that interaction is anxiety provoking. They're very comfortable picking up their phone and having a conversation. It's interesting because the other day I actually went to my sister-in-law's house, and my husband said, "You're just going to go to the door and knock on the door and not let her know you're coming?" I was like, "Yes." And he goes, "Nobody does that anymore." And I was like, "You're right." Like that, no one's ringing your doorbell unexpectedly nowadays. We don't know how to do that. We don't know how to interact like we all did when we were younger, where you would have to go to the door to have a conversation or pick up the phone and call without a text saying, I'm about to call you, or can we just communicate through text? So I
Mhm.
think I think youth need to have those interactions and know how to interact. They're going into a workforce with people who know how to interact and expect that. And so we want them to be prepared for that life, but we also want them to know how to do that for their own sense.
Yeah, in fact, there's I don't know if you've heard of Sebastian Maniscalco. He's a comedian, but does a bit about um, back in when he was being raised, how they would keep Intamins out, and nobody could touch it because somebody might drop by suddenly, and we want to have something available for them. And now versus somebody rings on the doorbell and everybody get down quick. We don't want anybody to see that we're home. It's a totally different. It's not an arranged visit. It was very amusing at how much that has changed in such a short period of time.
Right.
So I'm going to do it's just fun. I like to do rapid fire. It just kind of breaks things up. Um, these are just rapid fire fun questions. Buffalo wings, best spot.
Oh, Elmos. ELMOS.
Last text you sent to a friend.
Oh, good luck today.
Okay, that's nice. Introvert or extrovert?
Introvert.
One nonprofit leader everyone should follow.
Oh, goodness. Hmm. You know what? I'm going to say Eddie Garcia. He's with the Global Initiative on Loneliness and Connection.
Okay. And if you could match any two people in the world as Compeer friends, who would you pair?
This is going to be political for a second, but I would
That's
pair
okay.
a
You can,
Republican and a Democrat and really have them get to the core of the human side of things and see what
yeah.
they can do from there.
I think that's a great idea. I wish you could pull that one off. Because one side thinks the other side is evil and vice versa.
Right.
And it's just not so simple, is it? So, biggest misconception about mental health.
That people who have a mental health diagnosis are violent or unsafe towards you.
Okay, you were really quick on the rapid fire. So you're on the steering committee of the Global Initiative on Loneliness and Connection, which works alongside WHO, World Health Organization. How did a nonprofit CEO from Buffalo end up in those rooms?
Well, this goes back to when our phones can benefit us and being online can benefit us, as I learned about them through LinkedIn and saw what they were doing. And I thought, wow, Compeer should be part of this. Like we want to be at the table having these conversations. We want to contribute and we want to learn. So I reached out and asked if we could be a member, and we went through the process to be a member as an organization. And about 3/4 of a year into it, they did a survey of all the members of, here are opportunities to get involved in different ways other than your organization being a member. If you're interested, here's how that could look. So I responded saying, I want to be more involved. I don't know what that looks like. Here's what I could bring to the table. Let's have a conversation. And Eddie, who I actually just mentioned, reached out and said, let's have that conversation. We have some opportunities. And it has been a wild ride since then. I have met people from so many different countries and learned about what they see as lonely, how they define loneliness, how they're addressing loneliness. I've learned so much for our organization. It felt comfortable being in a space with other people addressing the same topic. And it is just an amazing experience to go worldwide in ways that you never thought you could. Thanks to technology, of course, it brings us together, but it's really about us being intentional with those conversations and learning from one another. To ourself and another organization that I met through the Global Initiative are going after a grant to start a Compeer location in Colombia. So it opens doors for us to be able to do more as an organization and to learn from others and grow. It's fantastic.
So GLC spans 23 countries. Does loneliness look different in some place like Japan versus Australia?
From what I've learned, it does. At the core, I think we're all defining loneliness the same, but there are different intersections that we've really talked a lot more about: poverty and loneliness, social media and loneliness, the workforce and loneliness. And when you start looking at different communities, what's great is that they're all responding based on their own community need. They're not all taking a script and saying, we're all going to respond to loneliness this way. It's like, no, at Compeer, we're addressing loneliness through the intersection of mental health. Not everybody is looking at that. They might be just looking at poverty. And so we learn from one another about what everyone is doing, but it's great to hear how everyone's done their homework on their own community to say, this is how we're going to address loneliness, because in our community, the intersection of loneliness and whatever that piece is the most important thing we need to address first, and then second, and then third. So I think loneliness, how we identify it, all looks the same, but I think it looks different based on each community for how they're going to address it or what their priority areas are.
So your organization just got a $1.2 million federal grant. And so I assume that you're going to be expanding out it says to expand youth mentoring into 15 new communities. How do you expand out like that, but still maintain central core of who you are as an organization?
It's a lot harder than I would like it to be, but I think it's about really having something as simple as SOPs, so our standard operating procedures, having things in writing, having policies down, having manuals down, and then having examples from each of our locations, like what's working for you, how are you doing this, and really compiling a great toolkit so that when we roll it out, we have that to go off of for a new location, but also that they can lean on any of the other locations. So in Buffalo, it may look different than it does in Livingston County, New York, which is more rural. So Buffalo and Livingston are different, but there are other locations that are serving a rural population. So who can we connect them to learn from? So that peer learning between all affiliates is so beneficial. Our Rochester, New York location has a very strong veteran client population. They're serving veterans and addressing loneliness and mental health within that population. So if we met a new location and they had a strong interest in serving the veteran population, we would connect them to Rochester, New York. So it's that peer support, peer learning on top of that existing foundation of a toolkit, and providing that support from our office is really the best way to do that. And I would say the other piece is getting to know what that community needs. So like when we're meeting with our friends in Columbia, that looks different than any other community that we are serving. So leaning on them to really be the experts of their own community and how this model can complement the needs of that community.
So how do you, or where are all the areas in the United States geographically that you're serving now? So you mentioned a lot of locations within New York. Even though you're 50 years into it, you have to depend on a lot of volunteers, it sounds like, and working on a skeleton budget. It's probably difficult to expand out and make sure that you're able to service each area. Where are the areas that you're currently working with?
So like I said, New York, Pennsylvania would be our second state within most number of locations. And then we're in North Carolina, Florida, Kansas, Ohio. Might be missing a state right off the top of my head. And we've had, historically, we've had a location on the West Coast, but, because of funding, it didn't continue. So we put a large focus now on starting a new location with enough funding to get through the first couple of years and get them used to doing their own fundraising. And I think that's the conversation we have a lot. Some of our locations are standalone 501c3. They're their own nonprofit. In Buffalo, in Rochester, we are our own nonprofits. Most of our locations, and where we find it most successful, is when they start a new program at an existing nonprofit. So it's a program versus its own agency. Right. And then they have the resources of that nonprofit that they can lean on. They're not worried about doing the HR and the finance. They're worried about delivering just the program, and everything else doesn't get in the way because that's already taken care of by the nonprofit. So we look at starting new locations, ideally as programs, at another agency so that they can be more successful. We don't want to start something that's not going to last the next 5 years. When you make that commitment to people and to that community, you want to be there for the long term. So that's what we found to be more successful. We're looking to expand to new locations and identifying the funding to support them.
So, if somebody wanted to get involved either as a volunteer or even another nonprofit wanted to help you expand your footprint, or someone in one of those service areas just felt lonely and wanted to, or someone wanted to volunteer um, in your organization, what's the best way that someone could find out more about Compeer?
So a couple ways: they can go on our website at compeer.org. They can learn about all of our locations. There's actually a directory of all of our locations on there, but there's also a form that they can fill out that connects them directly with our team. And then we reach out to them to see if they want to learn more about starting a location or about volunteering or receiving. We answer all those questions through that form. They can also follow us on social media platforms to see what it looks like day in and day out for the content that we're sharing. And you don't have to be in one of our locations to support us. If you want to be a volunteer and you can only communicate by phone, let's just say you're living in Texas and you want to be engaged, we don't have a Texas location. Well, you can be a phone buddy, talking with an older adult by phone and engaging with them. That works just as well. So anyone can really be engaged with Compeer regardless of where they're living.
So you could virtually offer this service in a number of different places that you really are. You'd be totally remote with the person and remote with the volunteer. How often does that happen?
It really peaked in COVID. During COVID, a lot of people expressed interest in doing that. Actually, we had our highest number of volunteers come forward in COVID. Fascinating. And I think, again, people had the time. They weren't driving anymore to and from work. They didn't have that commute time. They wanted to give back. They wanted to feel more connected and less isolated. So it happened a lot during COVID. It is decreased following COVID. So I would say it's not as common as it was then, but it's still very much something that happens. It also happens when, say, a college student becomes a mentor or a volunteer, and then they go back to their home area. They then stay connected virtually with someone they've been matched with in the town that they went to college in. So I think that starts off in person, and then they move, or a volunteer moves for any other reason. But we definitely present that to individuals to say this is an option that could meet your availability.
Well, it sounds like a tremendous organization. Thanks for coming on, Cheri.